Based on the current, the young, and the restless spoilers, your storyline lines up very clearly with the direction the show is pushing right now. Nick is slipping deeper into danger in Vegas. Adam is putting the spider identity back on in order to get close to Riza. Matt Clark is tightening the pressure around them. And Lily is taking direct shots at the Summers Empire. What makes this material so compelling is not simply who is lying to whom, but the fact that every character still believes they have some control left, even as everything has already started to slide beyond their grasp. What makes this story so disturbing is not only the deception on the surface, but the deeper truth underneath it. Each person is trying to stay upright while standing on ground that is already collapsing. In Vegas, the hunt for Matt is tense enough on its own, but Nick's deterioration turns the entire mission into something far more fragile and frightening. He is no longer just a man under pressure in the middle of a dangerous pursuit. He is becoming someone who is being hollowed out from the inside by his own unraveling. The darkest part is that Nick still does not see himself as a man falling apart. He still convinces himself that he is only using something to keep going, to stay sharp, to avoid being the one left behind in a game where hesitation feels fatal. That illusion is the most dangerous thing about him now. It allows him to sound driven, focused, and aggressive, but underneath that sudden intensity is a body already worn down, a mind drifting in and out, and a spirit that is beginning to fracture in ways he no longer seems able to control. The call from Sharon and Chelsea should have been a moment that connected Vegas to the people anxiously waiting for answers, but instead it exposed exactly what Nick wanted to hide. At first, he speaks with forced enthusiasm, the kind of strained energy that comes from someone trying too hard to sound normal, trying too hard to prove that he is still useful, still strong, still in charge of the situation. But once the drug begins to settle over him, that energy starts to collapse. His voice becomes slower, more distant, more exhausted, as if he no longer has the strength to keep holding up the version of himself he wants them to hear. The moment he falls asleep during the call is not just a strange detail. It is a warning siren. His body betrays him before he can continue pretending. Sharon and Chelsea do not need to see him in person to understand that something is wrong. That stretch of silence on the line says more than any confession could have. A man who is supposed to play a critical role in finding Matt suddenly disappears in the middle of a conversation, then wakes up and throws out a rushed excuse before hanging up. That is no longer carelessness. That is the sound of someone moving closer to collapse. What lingers after that conversation is not the information that Adam is with Riza or that things are progressing. What remains is the unease surrounding Nick. Sharon and Chelsea both have reason to worry, but their concern comes from different emotional places. Chelsea views everything through fear because she already knows how much there is to lose. She worries about Adam because he is walking back into the world of Spider, back into the darker instincts that once made him dangerous even to himself. But beneath that fear is another layer of helplessness, because the closer Adam gets to the truth, the farther he must move from safety. Sharon is calmer on the surface, but that calmness does not mean she feels less. It means she knows panic will not save anyone. Both women are far away from Vegas, and that distance makes the danger feel even worse. They cannot intervene. They cannot stop what is happening. They can only listen for cracks in voices, strange pauses, and the kinds of subtle signs that suggest something is going very wrong. Meanwhile, on the other side of this search, Adam is walking a thin line between performance and identity. He is not merely getting close to Riza as a link to Matt. He is being forced back toward a version of himself he has tried hard to bury. The flirting, the kisses, the careful reading of her reactions, none of it is just strategy. It is a return to the instincts of Spider, the version of Adam that knows how to move through shadows, how to manipulate trust, how to turn intimacy into leverage. That is why Chelsea's fear is justified. Even if Adam tells himself that he is only playing a role, the line between a role and an old instinct is never as solid as he would like to believe. The deeper he moves into this old way of operating, the greater the risk that he awakens something inside himself he may not be able to fully contain. The danger is not only whether he can fool Riza. The real danger is whether he can do it without losing pieces of himself in the process. Riz's response sharpens the tension even further. The moment Adam assumes that her partner is a man, she immediately notices. That small detail is enough to alert her that his interest is not ordinary curiosity. He wants access to badly. He is pushing too hard. He is reaching toward something he should not know enough about to chase this intensely. Adam tries to cover, but his explanation only delays the suspicion rather than erasing it. Riza may reassure him that the meeting will happen, but that reassurance does not feel safe. It feels like bait. Something suspended just far enough ahead to keep both Adam and Nick moving while never fully confirming who is truly leading whom and who might already be walking into a trap. The contrast between Adam and Nick is one of the strongest elements in this entire storyline. The deeper Adam steps into Spider, the more cautious he becomes. He has to stay cold, alert, and disciplined because he understands that the most dangerous mistake in a world like this is impatience. Nick is moving in the opposite direction. The deeper he sinks into chemical dependency, the more impulsive he becomes, the more restless, the more convinced that the answer is to rush toward Matt as quickly as possible. One man grows more careful because he understands the darkness around him. The other grows more reckless because he still imagines he can overpower it. That imbalance creates tension in every scene they share. When Adam returns to the room and finds Nick stretched out on the sofa, that image alone says more than dialogue ever could. This is no longer a trusted partner who is simply tired after a hard day. This is a man beginning to fall apart while still insisting that he is ready to push forward. When Nick wakes, he is disoriented, sluggish, and unfocused. Adam's suspicion is natural, and the fact that he immediately wonders whether Nick raided the minibar shows that the change in Nick is now obvious enough to demand an explanation. Still, Nick lies. He claims he exhausted himself at the gym, as though assigning his deterioration a harmless explanation can make it easier to accept. This is the familiar self-deception of someone who is slipping into dependence and still refuses to call it by its real name. He does not say he is breaking down. He says he is tired. He does not admit he is losing control. He says he only needs a boost. He does not face the fact that he is destroying himself. He tells himself he is doing what is necessary to keep going. Then Nick goes into the bathroom and takes out the reward Justin gave him during that earlier drug exchange. The act is brief, but emotionally it carries enormous weight. He is not reaching for it after total defeat or after everything has already fallen apart. He is reaching for it while the plan is still in motion, while Adam has just brought back potentially crucial information, while this is precisely the moment he most needs to be clear-headed. That matters. It means the substance is no longer just a reaction to crisis. It is becoming something Nick sees as a tool, something functional, something he allows himself to depend on under the excuse that it is temporary and necessary. Justin planted that idea when he suggested that sometimes a person needs a little push. And Nick grabs onto that lie because it gives him permission to step even farther into darkness without having to admit what he is doing. Emotionally, this is one of the most painful parts of the story. It is infuriating because Nick is being so reckless with himself and with everyone depending on him. But it is also deeply sad because he is not using it for pleasure. He is using it to cover an emptiness inside himself that keeps growing. When Nick comes back to Adam full of sudden energy, the shift must be jarring. Adam's confusion makes complete sense, because no one could miss how unnatural that change is. But Adam is also consumed by pressure from Riza, from Matt, and from the need to hold the Spider persona together, so he does not stop long enough to truly confront what is happening to his brother. That is one of the most painfully human aspects of the storyline. Sometimes the warning signs in someone we love are not missed because we do not care, but because we are drowning in our own emergencies and do not yet understand how close they are to the edge. Adam still tells Nick that Riza wants him to meet her partner. Under normal circumstances, that information alone would be serious enough. But in Nick's condition, it becomes fuel for his recklessness. He instantly convinces himself that the partner must be Matt. He instantly wants to seize the opportunity. He instantly wants to end everything as fast as possible. On the surface, that confidence sounds bold. In truth, it is hollow. It is the confidence of a man whose judgment is being chemically distorted, not strengthened. Adam remains more cautious, and that caution comes not only from instinct but from understanding that a man like Matt does not reveal himself without a reason. The closer they get, the more dangerous it becomes. Adam does not want this meeting to turn into a blind walk into an ambush, but Nick no longer has the patience for caution. He is determined to take Matt down as soon as he can, as if eliminating Matt will somehow silence all the chaos rising inside him. That belief is dangerous because it turns Matt into a perfect excuse. As long as Matt is still out there, Nick can keep telling himself that every reckless choice, every desperate act, every chemical shortcut is justified by the mission. The external enemy becomes a shield that hides the deeper internal war he cannot bear to face. On Matt's side, his return to Riz's room shifts the story into something colder and sharper. He sees the poker chips and immediately understands that Spider is not just some faded legend from the past. Spider may still be very real, and perhaps even more skilled than before. That detail matters because it reminds us that Matt is not careless. He observes quickly, calculates quickly, and knows how to read a person through the smallest clues. When he brings up the idea of meeting Spider again, it no longer feels like passing curiosity. It feels deliberate. He wants to look this man in the eye. He wants to test him, measure him, and possibly force the truth into the open. When Riza admits Spider is ready whenever Matt is ready, the danger becomes immediate. All of the preparation, all of the lies, all of the carefully maintained personas are now moving toward one private meeting where even one wrong move could destroy everything. What makes these scenes gripping is that no one involved is entering this stage of the game from a truly secure position. Adam thinks he is drawing Matt into the light, but he is also being pulled deeper into the gray areas of his own identity. Nick thinks he is getting closer to victory, yet he is the one most vulnerable because his body and mind are already unstable. Riza appears to control the connection between both sides, but she herself is caught in layers of doubt and calculation. Matt may seem like the one with the upper hand, but he is also moving closer to people who know enough about him to become genuinely dangerous. That is why the tension here does not feel simple or one-directional. It is not just about heroes trying to outmaneuver a villain. It is about everyone watching, testing, lying, and being lied to at the same time. Everyone is hunting and being hunted. Everyone is concealing something while also risking exposure. Running alongside all of this is Lily's clash with the Summers Empire, which may not carry the same physical danger as the Vegas storyline, but powerfully reflects the same emotional core. Pride, humiliation, and resentment are driving people to strike hard before they are struck themselves. Lily's mockery of Summers' conglomerate is not just a sarcastic jab. It is loaded with contempt, anger, and the bitter satisfaction of aiming directly at someone else's ambition. When she suggests that the name itself will not survive more than a few months before Phyllis comes crawling back to Kane, she is not merely insulting the business. She is attacking the fantasy behind it. She is saying that what is being presented as strength is really just temporary noise, a performance of power built on instability. That moment lands because Lily is not speaking from a position of total innocence. She, too, is under scrutiny. She, too, has been challenged, judged, and forced to defend her role in the larger unrest swirling around her. That gives her mockery a sharper emotional edge. She is not simply punching down. She is lashing back while trying to keep her own dignity intact. When a person feels cornered, one of the fastest ways to regain control is to expose the weakness in the person standing across from them. Lily does exactly that. She does not retreat. She does not soften. She turns cold, sharp, and dismissive, as though that is the only way to avoid being reduced to someone else's version of the truth. That is part of what keeps Lily compelling even in moments of conflict. She refuses to become passive. She always tries to redefine the battlefield, even when she is standing on unstable ground herself. If we step back, Nick and Lily are actually trapped in similar emotional patterns, even though their battles look completely different. Nick fights through collapse and reckless momentum. Lily fights through sharpness and emotional retaliation. One hides his unraveling behind bursts of manic determination. The other hides her pain behind polished disdain. Neither of them wants to admit how deeply shaken they really are. Both choose action over vulnerability. And that is what gives this episode more weight than an ordinary chain of plot beats. It is not just about who meets whom, who suspects what, or who is walking toward a trap. It is about how pressure erodes people in different ways while pushing them all toward the same breaking point, where they must choose between an unbearable truth and a lie that still feels easier to hold. What I admire most in this material is the way the tension grows not through loud explosions, but through small disruptions in rhythm. A phone call turns silent at exactly the wrong moment. A man collapses onto a sofa while his brother returns from a dangerous mission. A flimsy excuse about the gym reveals more than a confession might have. A burst of sudden energy becomes evidence of instability rather than recovery. A glance at a stack of poker chips tells Matt that Spider is not some ghost of the past. A cruel remark about Summer's conglomerate transforms a business confrontation into a war of pride. These details are small on the surface, but together they create that particular Y&R atmosphere where everyone still speaks in controlled tones while the ground underneath them is already shaking. If I am being honest on a personal level, Nick is the part of this story that hits me the hardest. Not because he is the weakest person in the room, but because he is trying the hardest to look strong while he is quietly doing the worst. There is something painfully human about that. So often people do not collapse when they are openly devastated. They collapse while insisting they can still handle one more day, one more step, one more push. The more Nick says he is fine, the more eager he becomes to take Matt down, the more tragic he feels to me. This is no longer just a pursuit of an enemy. It is a desperate race against his own disintegration. And with Adam, there is something equally heartbreaking in the fact that in order to protect the people he loves, he has to step back into the most dangerous version of himself. That is the kind of price Y&R often portrays so well. No one comes out of a war like this completely clean, and no one can look back at what they became without feeling at least a little haunted by it. In the end, the emotional power of this storyline comes from the fact that every character is being driven by something deeply personal. Nick is driven by his obsession with stopping Matt and by the terror that he may not be strong enough to do it without chemical help. Adam is driven by the need to uncover the truth, even if it means slipping back into the shadows of his own past. Sharon and Chelsea are driven by the helpless fear of watching from a distance while the danger grows. Riza is driven by suspicion and self-protection. Matt is driven by the sense that it is finally time for all the hidden cards to be put on the table. Lily is driven by wounded pride and a refusal to let herself be treated like the loser in someone else's story. When all of those motivations are brought together, this episode becomes more than a sequence of events. It becomes a portrait of unraveling pride, secrecy, and emotional survival, all moving toward a collision that no one is truly ready for. And maybe that is what lingers the most with me. Beneath all the strategy, all the lies, and all the posturing, these characters feel painfully fragile. That is what gives the story its real force. It is not just suspense, it is the ache of watching people fight so hard to stay in control when the truth is that they are already being changed by the very battle they are trying to win.